Aside from being the precursor to the more famous Second Punic War, the First Punic War is one of the biggest conflicts of antiquity and was a prelude of sorts to some of the more devastating wars not just in antiquity but in all of history, even up to now. The outcome of this war rocketed Rome into a world superpower and set the stage for even bigger conflicts in the future. The war was so large that it redefined warfare ironically has its origins in the small island of Sicily. The tyrant of Syracuse was a large employer of a group of mercenaries. After his death, the mercenaries were left unemployed. They were not happy and occupied the city of Messina in northern Syracuse. After this, they renamed themselves the Mamertines, the son of Mars. The new tyrant of Syracuse raised an army and pushed the Mamertines back into the city of Messina, which they subsequently put under siege. A group of the Mamertines wanted to ask Rome for help in their war with Syracuse, and another wanted to ask Carthage for help. In the end, both factions got a request for help, and both ended up saying yes, some more reluctant than others. Carthage sent an army to expel the Mamertines and garrison the city. Rome also sent an army to do the same thing and booted the Carthaginians when they got there. Carthage was pissed and sent an army to retake the city along with Syracuse. One battle later, and the city was still under Roman hands. The battle itself wasn't that large, with only around 7,600 people dying, but after the smoke cleared, one thing was for certain. There was no turning back. Rome and Carthage were going to war. The Romans attacked the city of Syracuse, and after a long drawn-out siege, Rome retreated, but in the end, the city ended up switching sides and joining Rome in their fight against Carthage. The Romans made large gains in the middle region of Sicily, taking up to the city of Agrigentum. Carthage raised an army of over 50,000 men and sent them to the city of Agrigentum, which was under siege at the time. After a large battle, the Carthaginians were forced to retreat from the city and it fell under Roman occupation. This was a Pyrrhic victory, however, since they lost significantly more men than the Carthaginians did. Rome was dominating Carthage on land, but they had one problem. The Carthaginians stopped attacking the Romans in open combat, knowing that they would lose. They instead decided to hide in their well-fortified cities and let their enemy come to them. At this time, the Romans were not very good at siege warfare, and the war turned into a standstill. There was one thing, however, that could change the tide of the war in the favor of Rome. You see, most of the Carthaginian strongholds were coastal cities. If Rome could build a navy stronger than Carthage's, they could turn the war in their favor. That, however, is easier said than done. Carthage was a maritime power and had the largest fleet in the ancient world. Rome had almost no navy to speak of and didn't know how to build one. To change this, they kind of just stole a Carthaginian design, but because they were new at shipbuilding, their vessels were slower and less maneuverable. They built around 120 warships and set sail for Sicily. On their way there, they sent 17 ships to the Lipari Islands in an attempt to seize the port of Lipara. Carthage sent a group of around 20 ships to stop them, and after a quick battle, Carthage destroyed the inexperienced Roman ships. If this was an indicator of how the rest of the war and sea would go, then the Romans stood no chance of gaining naval superiority. They needed to change something quickly. The problem was that the Romans lacked sea experience to go toe-to-toe with the Carthaginians. But one thing they had that the Carthaginians did not was expert heavy infantry. Rome had some of the best heavy infantry in the world at this time, and if they could find a way to get these soldiers onto Carthaginian ships, then they could start winning the battles. Then the Romans had their light bulb moment and created an invention known as the corvus. The corvus was essentially a giant ramp that could attach to enemy ships, allowing the soldiers on board the Roman ships to board the Carthaginian ships and wipe out their entire crew, and if they were careful, even keep the ship for themselves. The Romans first employed the corvus at the Battle of Mylae to devastating effect. After a few more battles, Rome gained naval superiority and could now conduct their operations without Carthaginian intervention. This was, however, not enough to turn the war in favor of Rome, as previously believed. The war was still a stalemate. The Romans, however, were not just going to sit back and take this. They were going to stab Carthage in the heart of their empire. They were going for Carthage. The Romans sent a giant invasion force, and Carthage sent their fleet to stop them. The Battle of Cape Agnomus, which was the largest naval battle in history at that point, resulted in a decisive Roman victory, and gave them free rein to move their forces onto mainland Carthage. They soon captured the city of Tunis. Carthage offered to surrender, but the Roman terms were so outrageous that they could not accept. Carthage hired a mercenary called Xanthippus to help and kick the Romans out of Africa, and surprisingly he did just that, forcing the Romans out of Africa. A fleet was sent to pick up the remaining troops that were still left there, but during the ride back home, the entire fleet was destroyed in a storm, killing over 100,000 soldiers. Now, most nations would sue for peace at this point. Rome, however, was not most nations, and built a new fleet from scratch in 3 months. They sent their fresh fleet to war, and you can't make this shit up. It got destroyed in another storm. At this point, Rome had lost 2 entire fleets, and instead of suing for peace, they just built a new one and got back to work. I cannot understate how impressive this is. In Sicily, Rome had pushed Carthage back to a few strongholds and probably could have taken the entire island if they had lost another fleet, and get this, another fucking storm. They built another goddamn fleet and defeated the Carthaginians at the Battle of the Egades, ending the war once and for all. The war resulted in the island of Sardinia, Corsica, and Sicily falling under the control of Rome, and Carthage being forced to pay a huge debt that would cripple the nation and enrage a generation of Carthaginians, inspiring anti-Roman sentiment among individuals like Hannibal Barca. Thank you for watching this video. If you have an idea for a video I should make, then put it down in the comments, and because I have like 20 subs, I'll probably just do it. that's about it. So yeah.